This is a perfect example of how the Creative Grids Kaleidoscope 45-degree angle can be used 3 different ways to create 3 different quilts, and each quilt uses one Jellyroll, background fabric, and your choice of accent fabric. So let's get started. The book is called Dresden Plate Quilts. It is 16 pages, full color throughout, and all of the templates that are included are also full size so that they can be copied onto copy paper and then used with freezer paper. There are 3 different quilts in the book, and each uses the ruler in a different way. So the first quilt is the one that's on the table, and this is one of the beautiful photographs that's in the book. I love the photography. And this has 88 pointed Dresden plates, and it was all cut out of 40 strips. You can actually get 100 out of there. So I used 88 because of the size I wanted, but it is shocking to me that you can get 100 of these little blocks out of 40 2.5-inch strips. So on this storyboard, I showed 2.5-inch strips. You can layer them up to 8 layers high, and if I do that, every time I move the tool, I am cutting out an entire block. So if you notice, here's a wedge, and I can continue cutting the entire strip that way, and there's absolutely no waste of fabric. If I cut these with 8 layers deep, that means every one of these is going to be an entire Dresden plate. And since there are 40 strips in there, 8 goes into 40 5 times, so that means I only have to do that cutting 5 times, and I have all of the units ready to make my Dresden plates. Now, to make the pointy version that you saw in that picture, you fold them in half, and you can see by the thread here that I'm just sewing 1/4 inch all along this top edge. When I sew that 1/4 inch, I'm just folding these in half and chaining them all the way across. When I do that, Gypsy Quilter has a tool called the cutting gizmo, and this has little razor blades in the top here. So when I go to clip these together, this acts as a third hand, so I can take these and literally clip them with this gadget to separate all of these instead of taking the time to do it with scissors. So that goes very quickly. Now, when you are doing these, you need to press or finger press a crease here, because when I turn this point right side out, and to do that, I have a point trimmer, and that makes a perfect point up here. When I turn them right side out, you can see that it self-faces on the wrong side, and this is what it looks like on the right side. Then I just sew 8 of those units together to create the pointed Dresden plate right here. I can applique this down on a sewing machine with a narrow zigzag and monofilament thread, or it takes me about 15 minutes to stitch these by hand on the small blocks. None of the blocks are larger than 7 inches, so it's a perfect project as a carry-along. Quilt that also uses pointed Dresden plates is this one, and this is called a sunburst block. These blocks are a little larger, and they're made by sewing 2 2.5-inch strips together, the length of the fabric, and then they are cut into 5-inch segments. 5 inches times 8 is 40 inches, which is the usable inch on any 2.5-inch strip, so the math works out perfectly. Once I've divided all of those, let's flip this over, but once I have separated those strip sets into 8 5-inch units, I fold it in half just like I did here, sew across the top, and it self-faces, and this time I have a unit that is striped, and if you'll notice, these are 5 inches high, so it's going to create a bigger block. This is the quilt. It's hanging on the wall behind me, and if you notice, instead of points, this has all curved outside edges. So to create that quilt, Once again, you're cutting the wedges with the 45-degree Kaleidoscope tool. And instead of sewing across the top, I now sew the angled sides and sew them so there are 8 petals in this. The book comes with a template that has lines drawn on it, and I just place those drawn lines on the seam lines, trim the fabric 1/4 inch away from the template on all sides, and turn with a glue stick. This doesn't have to be anything complicated. It can be the glue sticks you ate in kindergarten. It's, as long as it's water soluble, it's perfectly fine. And then I did a little center here, and then you just place these on your background blocks. All 3 quilts are included in the book. All of the templates are full size, so they are very easy for you to use. You can literally just copy them right out of the book onto copy paper. I hope you enjoy it, and please take the opportunity to try all 3 techniques that are shown in the book, and it's always great to try a new technique.